When you think of the Cold War, what comes to mind? Is it the tense standoffs, the shadowy world of espionage, or the ever-present threat of nuclear war? For many, the era conjures images of a world on edge, where every headline seemed to hint at disaster just around the corner. Huge missiles rolling through city streets, submarines gliding silently beneath the waves, and spies trading secrets in the shadows. These were the icons of the age. The world's imagination was gripped by the possibility of sudden, catastrophic conflict. For decades, the world held its breath, caught between two superpowers locked in a silent, high-stakes chess match. Ordinary people lived with a constant undercurrent of anxiety, never knowing if the next day would bring peace or devastation. But the most powerful weapon of the Cold War wasn't forged in a factory or hidden in a missile silo. It wasn't made of steel or uranium, and it couldn't be launched or detonated. The real weapon was knowledge. Information that could mean the difference between life and death if the unthinkable ever happened. It was the quiet power of understanding, of being prepared for the unimaginable. This knowledge wasn't about fighting an enemy with a gun or a bomb. It was about learning how to protect yourself and your loved ones from invisible dangers, like radioactive fallout, that could linger long after the initial blast. It was about understanding the science behind fallout, and how something you couldn't see or touch could be just as deadly as any weapon. People were taught to respect the invisible threat, and to take practical steps to defend against it. People learned to read the wind, not for the weather, but for the direction of a deadly cloud. Suddenly, a simple breeze could carry life or death consequences, and understanding its movement became a vital skill. Governments knew that in the chaos of a nuclear exchange, official help might never arrive in time. The infrastructure everyone relied on could vanish in an instant, leaving families to fend for themselves. So, they began a massive public education campaign, reaching into every home, school, and workplace. The goal was simple: to give ordinary people the tools and knowledge they needed to survive on their own. They distributed pamphlets and aired broadcasts, teaching people how to build shelters, stock supplies, and avoid radioactive dust. These instructions became as familiar as fire drills or first aid. This wasn't just about scaring people, it was about empowering them. It was about turning fear into action and uncertainty into a plan. Instead of just worrying about the mushroom cloud, people were taught to understand what came after it. They learned how to seal windows, ration water, and wait out the danger. The real power was knowing what to do when all the lights went out, how to stay calm, stay safe, and help others do the same. In the darkness, knowledge became a guiding light. In the end, it was this quiet revolution in public awareness that transformed terrified citizens into potential survivors. The true weapon of the Cold War was not fear, but the strength that comes from being prepared. At the heart of Cold War survival was fallout mapping. This was a time when the threat of nuclear war loomed large over everyday life. People were constantly reminded of the potential for disaster, and the need to be prepared was ingrained in the public consciousness. This wasn't done in a high-tech bunker, it was an art practiced by ordinary people. Families would gather around their kitchen tables, armed with pamphlets and maps, to plan their survival strategies. It was a community effort, with neighbors sharing information and resources to ensure everyone had a chance to survive. Imagine navigating through a thick fog, but this fog is radioactive. The invisible danger made every decision critical. One wrong move could mean exposure to deadly radiation. The maps they created were not just guides, they were lifelines. Fallout mapping was the compass guiding you to safety. It required a deep understanding of geography, wind patterns, and the behavior of radioactive particles. People had to become amateur meteorologists and geographers, learning to predict the movement of fallout clouds. Fallout is the most widespread danger after a nuclear explosion. The initial blast might be survivable if you were far enough away, but the fallout could reach you even hundreds of miles from ground zero. It was a silent, creeping threat that could turn a safe haven into a death trap. It can travel for thousands of miles, contaminating everything. The wind could carry radioactive particles across continents, making it essential to understand weather patterns. People had to stay informed about the latest forecasts and adjust their plans accordingly. Knowing where it was going was the difference between life and death. Families would huddle together, studying maps and charts, trying to predict the safest routes. It was a constant game of cat and mouse with an invisible enemy. People learned to look at the world with new eyes. Every cloud, every gust of wind, every change in the environment was scrutinized for signs of danger. It was a new way of seeing, born out of necessity. A flag flapping, smoke rising, or leaves rustling became vital clues. These seemingly mundane observations could provide critical information about the direction and speed of the fallout. It was a skill that required constant vigilance and a keen eye for detail. This lost art turned every citizen into a strategist, empowering them to face an unimaginable threat with courage. Civil defense drills were common, and people took them seriously. They knew that their survival depended on their ability to think ahead and act quickly. It's a skill that has faded from memory, but its lessons are more relevant today than ever. In a world where new threats continue to emerge, the principles of fallout mapping remind us of the importance of preparedness, community, and resilience. To truly understand the gravity of what happened on that fateful day, we need to step back in time and listen to the voices of those who lived through it. History is often told through grand events and official records, but the real impact is felt in the quiet stories of ordinary people. So, let's hear it from someone who was actually there, someone whose life was changed forever by the events that unfolded. I had the privilege of meeting Arthur, a sheep farmer who lived and worked in the vast, sun-baked stretches of the Australian outback during the 1950s, right at the time when the British government was conducting nuclear tests on Australian soil. Arthur wasn't a soldier or a scientist. He was just a man who depended on the land for his livelihood, someone who knew every inch of the fields and every shift in the wind. His days were spent tending sheep, mending fences, and watching the sky for signs of rain or drought. He told me about one particular morning that started out like any other, clear blue skies stretching endlessly overhead, the air crisp and still. But as the hours passed, he noticed something strange. A pale, unnatural haze began to creep across the horizon, slowly swallowing the familiar landscape. This wasn't a rain cloud, nor was it the dust from a distant storm. Arthur had seen both many times before. This was different, thicker, heavier, and tinged with a sense of unease. It was, as he would later learn, radioactive fallout drifting silently from the test site miles away. Arthur remembered the government pamphlets that had been distributed in the weeks before. They warned of gray snow, or a fine, powdery dust that might settle after a test. Most people didn't know what to make of it, but Arthur paid attention. He checked the wind, just as he always did before a storm, and realized it was blowing straight from the direction of the test site. The air felt different, charged with something he couldn't see but instinctively knew was dangerous. Without hesitation, Arthur gathered his family and began moving their sheep, crosswind, away from the path of the drifting cloud. It was a difficult decision, but he trusted his instincts and the knowledge passed down through generations of farmers. When they finally returned home, the world they knew had changed. A fine, almost ghostly layer of gray dust coated every surface, fences, tools, even the backs of the sheep. The land was eerily silent, as if holding its breath. Arthur's quick thinking, his use of a simple map, a compass, and his deep understanding of the wind's patterns had kept his family and flocks safe from harm. It was a testament to the power of observation and the wisdom that comes from living close to the land. Arthur's story is a powerful reminder that in the face of invisible threats, it's often the simplest tools, awareness, clear thinking, and respect for nature that become our greatest defenses. His experience stands as a quiet lesson for us all, echoing across the years whenever the sky turns gray. Arthur's story wasn't unique. During the Cold War, networks of ordinary people became civil defense observers. They were postmen, farmers, teachers, and librarians. They volunteered to track and report nuclear bursts and fallout. Their tools were simple: a map, a compass, and a ground zero indicator. They learned to estimate nuclear burst yield and plot fallout paths. These civilian observers formed a vital link in the chain of survival. They were the guardians of their communities, ready to provide life-saving information. The knowledge given to civilian observers can be broken down into 4 steps. First, observe the wind. Determine the wind's direction immediately after an explosion. Look at flags, smoke, or leaves. Second, plot the terrain using a map. Draw a line from the explosion's direction downwind. Identify hills or valleys that could affect fallout. Third, move crosswind to escape the fallout's path. If the wind is blowing north to south, move east or west. Fourth, track the time since detonation. Fallout decays over time. The 7-10 rule helps gauge safety. After 7 hours, radiation is 10% of its initial level. This knowledge allowed informed decisions about when to leave shelters. Fallout mapping might seem like a relic, but its logic is timeless. Observing your environment and moving intelligently is relevant for modern dangers. In industrial accidents or natural disasters, observe the wind direction. Move crosswind to escape toxic plumes or wildfire paths. During air pollution, knowing wind direction helps choose safe areas. The lesson from fallout mapping is universal. Pay attention to your environment. The threats may differ today, but the survival mindset is just as necessary. It's about seeing the invisible forces that shape your world. Use them to your advantage. In an age of technology, it's easy to rely on devices, but emergencies are when systems fail. The fallout mapping toolkit is simple and reliable. A local paper map is essential. A topographic map shows land contours. A reliable compass tells you where north is. It helps orient your map and navigate safely. A waterproof notebook and pencil are crucial. Write down key information and draw danger zones. These simple items form a robust survival toolkit. They are timeless tools you can count on. If fallout mapping was critical, why did we forget it? The Cold War ended, and the threat of nuclear war faded. Governments shifted priorities, and civil defense programs were cut. The rise of technology created a new safety paradigm. We began to rely on devices for information. This dependency created a blind spot. The generation that learned fallout mapping grew old. Their knowledge became a historical curiosity. We forgot that true security comes from knowledge and preparedness. In the end, survival comes down to your own awareness. It's a mindset you must cultivate daily. Pay attention to the world around you. Notice the wind, clouds, and environment. Technology can fail, but your senses and knowledge are always with you. Relearning self-reliance is about being prepared. Start with small actions. Feel the wind, observe the landscape, build a mental map of your world. The lesson of fallout mapping is about life. Knowledge is power, and simplicity is strength. Don't wait for a crisis to start paying attention. Be curious, be aware, be prepared. Your awareness will make all the difference.